Okay, now that's all sort of areas are done, we can start really putting it together. So a couple of things we want to do. First of all, we're going to put this cockpit into position properly. Now for that, good old fashioned super glue. So we're going to put a seam just down the back, just for speed, because this just use a touch of kicker. Okay, and then down here we just need to hook this out. I've got a bit of blue tack just acting as a type of stay, so we can just tack these down the front, 1 and 2. You should push down, I'm hoping. Same again, kicker. Okay, bit of a blow. Okay, now what we're going to do is leave this as a loose fit. We're just going to stick the top and the bottom, if you like, of these on. The reason for doing that is that we can manoeuvre it around, push the sides in as is required and everything else, without super gluing your finger to it like we're doing just there. So we just have to trim that bit of super glue just off of here. So we just pop a knife down in here whilst it's setting, otherwise we won't be able to fit our top part on there. So okay, that's in their position. In a moment we'll feed in this front canopy all the way down there. But now that's taken and is in position. Also, you can probably see here what we've actually done. This is just the wiring looms for these nav lights off of the front, come up and then come down to this side. This longer one here is the one off the nose wheel, which just comes down, and I take them down just to purely protect them, keeps the cables out of the way and stops them getting pinched and anything else. The other thing we've done is scooped out a little bit just down here, because the bottom of this tub is a little bit thick, and as you can probably see by these 2 marks, we can't really sand any more off the bottom of there, otherwise we're going to end up going through it completely. So what we'll do now is just have a quick test fit on there to make sure we all go in nicely. Okay, and that will all go in and starting to look very F-16I. Same time, opened up the plugs, so we've got these little plugs in the back here that are in there, obviously going to hold the tailplanes on, and we've opened up any holes as you saw us do in the first place. So that is how it is really going to go. Now there's a couple of things we need to do before we put it all together. We basically need to get the electrics all into position before we do it. That way, just before we glue it all together, we can test it and everything else. As you can see, we've got that hole in the top. That's really so we can get the microchip has got somewhere to go. So first thing we need to do, or we have done, we've got a tiny little bit of fibre optic coming out the back here. You might be able to see it just down there. That's hooked up and it's just laying down in the middle here. That's going to hook onto an LED on this wiring loom that we've got. This has got a slow flash on it, and it's the same as what they have on the tail of the F-16. Just down below would be the brake chute on some of them, but on this one it's just in like that. So that will fit in there. The other one we've got is a very powerful strobe, which is going to sit on the top. So what we've actually got for that, we've got it here. I've already marked out my positive and negative. The one with the tape has got the positive on. And then the other thing we've done, we've just used the mini drill and we've put in a little groove just down in the top here, and we've opened up one at the bottom purely so this, when it goes in, you can actually have a nice area for it to fit through. So what we're going to do, we are literally going to sit it in as it would be. Okay, and we just take a little bit of 10mm tape. So it's going to sit just like that. Okay, and it's just going to come in, sit in the top, in there, all the way. So what we do, we just do a quick test fit to make sure it will go together at the top, which it will. So what we'll do, again, using tape, we will just literally pop it along, just then, so it's all coming in the right position, just like so. As I say, really the tape is just to hold it all in, keep it all nicely in position, so then when we come along with these two, they go together, and as we feel it as it goes down, I've got no problems with it sticking out, so that's how we can sit it on. You might be able to see it, the little seed just on the top, and then obviously we can reposition that as is required nicer. Okay, so we just use some of these going down. Okay, extra thin in the top. Okay, same technique as we usually do. Tap the underside and brush along there. The capillary action then draws it up. Now, one of the lights we're not going to put on because you don't really see it is there's a little light underneath this little tube at the top here. Okay, and that one shines down on the refueling area for the air-to-air refueling, but we are not going to bother with putting a light in that one because obviously it's only turned on when it's actually air-to-air refueling, and for this particular one, as we all know now, it's going to be in the landing phase. So this will be a sort of temporary glue job, just tacking it all the way around. Okay, and then we'll leave that just out over here. So obviously the wiring for that will then come down the bottom in here, will then feed along to these ones, which then will eventually make their way to this area, and this will become a loose fit. So what we're going to do is we'll probably put in some little holders. You've got a clip at the back, but certainly for these other ones it will just make it a little bit more stable, and if we do need to get into it at any point, perhaps the chip needs changing, something like that, we can open it up, get into this area. The nose will be a loose fit, so we can get into the nose and take care of that as well. So now we're happy with how those all are. What we'll do, we'll just feed the cables just down for these. We had them the right way. So we just pop those all in there. Okay, and then this can then come in. Just make sure our fit is all good. Okay, more stable. Just need to get that to sit a little bit nicer. So what we'll do, touch a super glue just down here in the join. Cocktail stick just to push it along just a little bit. Bit of a wipe. Okay. Obviously what we'll do, we'll paint down there and put it black anyway. Okay, that's half a side in. Okay, and the other side. Okay, quick squirt. So obviously we've got a bit of white down here, but we'll take care of that all afterwards. But all the cables are down in here free, so what we can do, we can come along with a little bit of putty, put it up all around there to hide it, otherwise we might get some light from the actual LED showing through and it might be a little bit too bright. So as I say, there we go, that's the cockpit area section done. So now we can come along and we can just grab our little chip and our little bundles of wires. Okay, this is our little flasher unit and everything else and all the other wiring. So what we're going to do, this is going to be the main power feed. Okay, so what we'll do is we're just going to pop that down through a hole that we made in the nose gear, in the main gear even. Okay. Pull that through. Okay, and then let's say this thing can come up through the main area. And then we're going to fit in just like so. So we'll just tap this down now. Okay, so we just use a little bit of tape just to hold this into position, because then what we'll do is we will wire it all up and test it all. So give us a minute just to tape this up. So there we go, just a little bit of soldering. We've soldered the wires on. Little thing, if you're like me, I'm really rubbish at soldering. I tend to tape it down, wooden surface, okay? It's got overspray on it as well, so nothing's going to stick. So that way, it just sticks purely to the cable. So we've just done these. So what we do, we grab a power. This is the main power feed, okay? And then if this has gone well, and there we go. We've got one flashing in there, quite a mute one, and then obviously we've got the tail. We've got cables everywhere, but hopefully you can see. Got the one flashing down there. As I say, it doesn't pick up massively well, but as I say, with all the lights on, but you see it flashing on top of the tail, and by the time that's sunk in properly and had it all done round and everything else like that, we should be absolutely fine. So we just unplug this before we zap it and get the cables crossed and everything. So what you can do now, obviously needs insulating. So I must admit I have got some of these little heat shrink wrap ones, which do come in very handy, because these are the ones you literally just add a bit of temperature to, hair dry, something like that, hot air gun, and these shrink lovely and give you a nice insulated grip. So that's the one for the main tail. All done. So now we have to do the same with these ones around here at the front. These all need to be soldered up to the main front wiring looms, which are on here. So exactly the same thing again. Now this one is powered by a battery, purely because these are a little bit brighter in the front as well. This is a 5-volt system down the back, 9-volt off of the front, so we get some nice bright LEDs for the landing lights and things like that. So we'll get these done. Okay, so there we go. Hopefully you can see we've got nav lights on just down the side, main, which will be the actual nose wheel light, that one. This is where we've got the cables that are coming out at the bottom, and then obviously they'll feed out. At the moment we've got one going over here to 9-volt, the other one is here, which goes off to the mains. And then over here we've got this little guy flashing away, and then should be the one down the bottom there, down there, which is a little parachute light on the top, little flashing one as well. So between that, and then we've got, as you see, one down in here, we've got an LED, which that will go into the fibre optics and all done. Now for the moment it's all wired up and running, which is amazing. Loads of trouble, I don't know, we sort of trying to get the wiring. It's obviously all pole has to be correct, so it's not just like wiring up normal lights, you have to make sure they're all right, and obviously making sure you feed through. So for honest, this one is now all wired in through here. Okay, so now it comes out at the bottom. So in at the moment we've got the fibre optic cable, which is this one that runs to the very tip one down there. Okay, and then obviously this one on the top for the flasher. Okay, then obviously those have all got to be wired through. So you just have to mentally work out where all the cabling and all the wiring is going to go. So we've got a bit of a mess around here at the front, and I've obviously got to tape them up properly now, so they're all, you know, no problem. But I've only done them with tape as I went round to make sure they are going to work when you switch them on. But anyway, they do seem to work, so I'm very happy with how that's turned out, and that is the electrical side all done now. So what we can actually do now is get the camera back on its stand where it belongs, and we can start putting it together. So that was okay, moment of truth, you know, and it all seems to work, which is a bit of a thing. So now it's to that point where you literally hide it all away and those. So what we've done, we've popped it all together really to have a see. So we want to make sure we've got enough room, obviously, at the front for the nose to go on, as it will. It'll fit on there, no problem at all. And then obviously we've gone with the spine, fuel tanks, everything else. I've also just popped the crew in. The reason I put the crew in is because I wanted to make sure their heads missed the top and everything else like that. Whilst the crew was in here, I noticed, if you can spot it, there it is, there's a crack in the top of this one here, which, to be honest, I never noticed before, but I wasn't really looking. So if it had it, we're in trouble. So we might have to use the clear canopy instead of the smoked for this particular one. So it won't be a problem either way, but that gives us our look, and you can see now how chunky and how big this one is with the conformal fuel tanks and this spine and everything else like that. It is going to be quite a chunky thing. So the wings are done as well, so obviously we can test fit those, and they're going to be absolutely fine on here. Where's the other one? There we go. But that is our general size of what we're going to be working with and everything else. So it's going to be a really nice size to work with and everything else. So what we can do now, we can work on how we're going to do it. Now obviously we've got the microchip is back up in here, if you can see it, there it is. It's laying just down behind the actual thing, so it's down through the spine and out. Are we going to have the spine as a loose fit? Are we going to need to open it? That is the choices. I don't know. I might just seal it up and we'll call it quits in there, because we can, if we needed to, get to it to the rear, because there is a lot of slack on that, and pull it out that way. So what we can do now is start to really glue this up. We know we've got good clearances down, that it all fits okay, so now we can literally go along and glue them all together, taking our time and glue it all in, everything else. And what we do, we use this smoke one as a temporary canopy whilst we're painting other things, then we use the clear one as the proper nice one as we go through. The only other thing you could do is, if you look at some of the photos, the front part is smoked, the rear isn't. If you want to be really clever, you could cut the canopy with the clear for the rear, smoked for the front half. I don't know if you really want to go that far with it. So I'm going to get this thing all glued together. Right, so this has been drying overnight. So we've got the spine on, and what we did, we went around with a little bit of Mr. Surfacer. We got the 500 and the 1000, and literally just painted it in, because we had a couple of little gaps. Okay, now the gaps aren't massively important as you might think. If you're dealing with a seam line across the spine, you've got to be spot on. But these actual here are like bolt-on panels. It's the same with the conformal fuel tanks, these saddle tanks as they're known. The way that they sit on, there is sometimes a gap round them, and you look at the reference photos and you can see it. We want to have a quick clean up of this here. Now the easiest way to do that, we've used it a couple of times already on this build, is cellulose thinners. So all we do, we take a little bit of thinners, pop it on a cotton bud, okay, and all this will do is just literally wipe off the excess, okay, and it will just blend in any areas where it hasn't got enough, or perhaps it's got too much. Okay, just down like that, and it's starting to drag, so immediately we'll switch to a clean bit. Okay, and you don't want to be pulling it around too much around areas, otherwise you might find that you'll take it off. But there we go, you can take it down just like that. Okay, so it's a nice clean seam of white, as you can probably see, going along there like that. Same with the other side. We'll do that in a moment, but at the same time what we want to do is get these conformal fuel tanks can go on now. Okay, now as we said about just then, they don't have to be a perfect fit. It's just that their lineup is a little bit, shall we say, vague, because you've got one hole which you should have opened up just down the back here. Now with that hole opened up, obviously it gives you a position of how it's going to sit. But when you pop him in the hole like that, we just go the right side, when you've got him set in like there, it doesn't actually give you a very good how it fits up on the actual nose. So your best thing is to look at it, okay, and when it seems to be sat in the right location, there doesn't seem to be any giant big lumps and bumps and gaps all around it, you know it's in the rough place. If you're too far down, it won't stick, obviously, but it does come up to, he says, if we can get it in, just underneath the canopy framing, how it actually sits. And that's how it sits in real life. It's actually quite a loose fit. There's usually a rubber grommet on the real thing that runs all the way around. Now trying to replicate that's going to be really hard. If you are feeling adventurous, what you can actually do, liquid cement all the way around and then push it slightly. That'll give a slight bulge on the join and away you go. But as I said, that is if you're feeling rather brave. So what we'll do, we've got this one on here. So we'll just take a little bit of glue, and we're just going to put a tiny bit and just tack a couple of spots on this around here, where you can see it's a nice good clean join, and where it should be. Okay, now it's probably going to need a little bit of a squash on. Another thing you could do, if you've got the old-fashioned liquid cement with a needle, you can run a line of it all round, which is quite a handy thing to do. So we're really looking the business now. Now what we've got going on here, these little shiny plates, reinforcement plates, photo etch sheet that comes with this one. Now you don't get much of it that comes with the kit. Obviously there is some aftermarket ones now available. Edal have done one for this one. So all you really get is a little strengthener plate around the nose, a few little ones for the underside and some chaff buckets like that. But you do get these ones. Now they only fit down this side you saw on the other side. To be honest, they're nice and easy because they are flat, which always helps. So what I tend to do, drop super glue just on the back, then I'll use something else just to smooth it out a little bit. Okay, trying not to do that desperately. You don't want to drop it side down. Super glue off your fingers before you handle it and stick yourself to it. Okay, so this then will just go in here. Make sure you're level with the bottom. Now, unfortunately we've lost all the super glue off of it, so we'll just do a quick dab underneath. Okay, and then on the top, just making sure that bottom one's in. There's one. Let's see if I can do the underside of it better. But it's important to make sure it goes to the edges, because if it doesn't go to the edges you get a little lift off bit and then you can be in all sorts of trouble because it just happens to peel off. So this one goes right to the back. You can roughly tell where it goes because obviously it's the same width down here. Let's get rid of that, a bit of a push. There we go, that's those strengthening plates on. So same with the other side as well, they're on, say nicely in. Now the actual main wings themselves, it's well worth spending a little bit of time just making sure you're okay. So what I've done is gently sanded off the bottom because we were slightly out of alignment, it wasn't perfectly flat. So all we've done, sanding stick, come along, I'm just sanding the bottom half off. You can see that sort of raised line just down here. We want to get it as good as we can, certainly clean off the other side as well. So when we come for this push fit in, we get no real gap along this top, and it isn't actually a bad joint. I don't like to see joints like this on aircraft this size, because otherwise you do have these nasty seams running down here, but certainly it does fit in there quite well. So what we do is we can just hint them forward just a little bit. Liquid cement, and then the same thing again will come along with the SUFA 500, but remember, don't do the front part because obviously this slat at the front rotates downwards and slightly upwards. The funny thing about the F-16, when it is at rest, it's actually a few degrees pointing upwards, which just seems a little bit odd. You'd always think, you know, when there are, there's no hydraulics, it would droop down. F-16s always against the rule, they come upwards, so they will slightly face up. So there we go, we're really looking very F-16ish now. We can get those on. The tail planes I'm not going to fit because they're extremely tight fit and I want to put them in and we'll get the angle right. So if it's coming into land, obviously we want these to be horizontal with the ground as if it's actually in the landing configuration itself. So obviously we'll be having it something like this. So we don't want to put them on, or not until certainly we're near spraying everything else. This isn't fixed on, I've literally put it on to protect the cockpit. But to give you a little bit of a feed of what we're going to look like and the size, it is quite a lump. It's quite a big aircraft like this, and it's not as heavy as originally I was thinking. I know we've got a few bits to go on here still, but I was really worried about the weight with the gear. Now I'm not so. Now I can feel it. The centre of gravity with this one, okay, is a little bit nose heavy, but certainly by the time we do the engine and we get the engine, which we're going to work on next, and the back end in place, it should slightly balance this out, and with a weapons load and everything else, I think we're going to be okay. Okay, so we're to the point of really putting the wings on, and one of the things looking around at reference shots, because obviously we're doing this in the landing configuration, is that the wings, whilst we have down here, we have the flaperons, which are literally going to droop down to obviously give a little bit of lift needed. The thing is, at the front edge here, we've got a fixed slat. Now the slats are the ones on the front which curve forward, obviously, and with the flaps curving back gives you a greater curve of wing, greater lift and all the rest of it. Now, if you've built the Tamiya kit before, you'll know this is a loose fit and you can position it how you like. Unfortunately, Academy, and so far I can honestly say it's the only drawback with the kit, doesn't allow you to position the front leading edge slat. So what we need to do is find a way of actually bending it down. Now, in the olden days, when kits never used to have flaps and slats, I used to do this all the time by literally cutting a groove in the underside and then bending the top down so it fills in that groove. and away you go. It sounds a lot more complicated than it actually is. All we're going to do is at the front here, we've got the tab, if you look, it's going to be right where the actual thing is, because obviously we're going to be coming along here and it's in the way. So first of all, we need to get rid of that. So using a razor saw, we're literally just going to cut down a little bit down there, okay, and then just in a fraction, just like so, and then that little bit comes out just like that. So then that gives us our slat. So what we're going to do, just taking a knife for the moment, we are literally just going to follow the panel line in the middle, which is obviously the break between the two. Now we're just literally putting a blade along the length of it for the moment. Next we're going to come in with a P cutter. Now the reason for using a P cutter is literally so it'll give us quite a nice wide trench. Okay, so we don't want a thin one, we want quite a wide blade on this. So we just pop it in the hole, in the trench, in that panel line, and then all we're going to do, we're just literally popping it down, and we're just going to trace its tracks and go all the way through. Now it's going to take a bit of time, so I'm going to cut away here. All you do, nice light passes until you pass through this top part of it, okay? Okay, so we're getting close now. So literally it's only been about 10 passes and we're pretty much in, and you'll know when you're in because you drop through, but don't cut through to the top side, okay? So what you've basically done is made a 1mm trench down through the plastic. Now it does get a little bit tough when you get close, because also it cuts open the trench on the inside. Now I'll show you what I've got in a second. Now, these end bits tend to be a bit of a pain. So what we're going to do, just take your razor saw and just trim into the end parts, just so they can, that's it, and you'll feel them drop in, and then just scoop them out. So there we go, that's what we've caused now. We've actually got in quite a nice groove running right the way down. And as I say, it's roughly about 1mm thick, which then should give you a nice edge. So we just clean these corners off. Then we're going to come in again and literally just following the panel line from the top. Now don't push too hard because we don't want to cut this. All we're trying to do is score it. So what will happen is now we will bend it down. Okay, and we want it to go right at the top, like it's a cut. Okay, and then what we do is we add pressure on the bottom to rejoin these two areas together. So by bending them together like this, we get a curve. So what you do, you put some rubber bands around it like we've done here. Okay, we come along with a little bit of liquid cement, just brushed it along the line so it glues it together. I'm hoping this is going to hold because it's only been done literally a few moments ago. And then that way you end up with, now as you can see here, we've got a situation where you've got the actual downward bend. So from the outside, you can see, there we go, you can see we've got it. So then when we come along and insert this into here, you can see at the front here, we've got it bending very nicely down, giving us our edges. So then by the time we come along with this one, I know it's upside down, but you'll get the impression, it will go down like this and will give us our landing configuration for the flaps and the slats at the front. But it's just a little quick fix, and when you glue it up underneath, as you can see under here, it's actually a very nice joint. By the time you sand it, bit of primer, you'll never know what actually happened, but it is a nice quick way of getting that angle.